Hello! This video will explain the full rule set of SolarTCG, ranging from deck building to gameplay. There will also be multiple in-game examples to demonstrate its aspects. The video will be split into different sections, so if you want to skip to a certain part of the rules, check the timestamps in the description. SolarTCG is a two-player turn-based card game. The length of each game will be determined on how many turns you choose to play, with a minimum of around 20 minutes. Each player must have their own deck of 28 SolarTCG cards. This deck can be pre-made by each player, randomly chosen, or even drafted. It's up to you. An open, flat space is required to play this game. A table or desk is perfect. Pen and paper is also required to keep track of each card. The aim of SolarTCG is to have more solar points than your opponent after a certain number of turns. This number of turns should be determined before the game begins, depending on how long you want the game to be. More turns results in a longer game, with approximately 1 to 2 minutes per turn. We recommend at least 15 turns, and we do not recommend any more than 30 turns. The rules stated in this video are the rules we have chosen as the designers of this game. However, we encourage you to create your own versions using the cards of SolarTCG. You can alter the current rule set, create your own game, or use the cards to play traditional card games of your choice. The possibilities are endless. There are 32 different cards available to collect at the moment, each with a character like Happy Solar Panel or Tempered Glass. Each card has its own stats, abilities, and attributes. Each player in a game of SolarTCG will have their own deck with 28 of these cards. Note that a deck cannot contain more than 2 of the same card. In order to win, having a variety of card types is essential. There are 5 card types: production, attack, defense, event, and power cards. Since the aim of the game is to have more solar points than your opponent, the production card type is essential in collecting this currency. However, for a tactical advantage, you should create a diverse deck of both unique card types and attributes. Some cards have special variants. These variants have a different artwork, but identical stats, abilities, and attributes. When deck building and in the game, these variants are considered as different cards. Therefore, you may have 2 of each variant in your deck. Each card, when used, either gets placed on the field or causes an event. There are 2 main stats for each card: solar points and hearts, found below the image on the card. Solar points indicate the cost of the card. How many solar points are required to use it, indicated by the sun symbol. When using a card, the respective number of solar points gets deducted from your total. If you do not have enough solar points, you cannot use the card. Production, attack, and defense cards can be placed on the field, and therefore have a certain number of hearts, indicated by the heart symbol. When placed, these buildings can be damaged and their hearts decreased. Once a card reaches 0 hearts, the card is destroyed and discarded. At the start of the game, each player's deck should be shuffled thoroughly and put to the side. Throughout the game, each player will have a hand of 7 cards. At the beginning of the game, each player should draw the top 7 cards from their shuffled deck to go into the starting hand. When it's your turn, you may place cards from this hand onto the field. Once a card's abilities have ended or a structure destroyed, the card moves into the associated player's discard pile. If the player runs out of cards in the deck, the discard pile gets shuffled and becomes their new deck. The playing surface will become the field of the game, separated into different sections for different cards like this. Your hand is closest to you, with the 7 cards faced up on the table. Your deck is on the right of you, and the discard pile is on the left, both with cards face down. When you place structures on the field, they go in front of your hand, with the production cards towards the left and attack cards towards the right. any active event cards will be placed on the side like this. This position will be mirrored for your opponent, creating a full gameplay field. Note that at any one time, there may be only 10 active cards per player. This includes all card types until discarded. To begin the game, each player must have their shuffled deck and draw 7 cards for their hand, placed on the table in front of them. Each player will begin with 50 solar points, and from there, turn 1 begins. Each turn, one player will have their turn, and the other player will have theirs. Before the game, players will need to determine who will go first each turn between each other. Once both players have had their turn, it goes to turn 2, and then so on. At the end of the final turn, the game is finished, and the player with the most solar points wins. Every player's turn begins with an action phase, or attack phase, where all their cards on the field get activated. The first turn will not have an action phase, as no cards have yet been used. During the starting point of your turn, all your production cards on the field will produce the appropriate number of solar points, which is added to your total, and your attack cards will deal damage to opposing structures. Most cards will have their effects and abilities activated during the action phase, unless stated otherwise. And remember, only your structures are activated, not your opponent's. If one of your opponent's structures gets its hearts below 0, it gets deactivated and added to their discard pile. In addition, any cards which have their effects ended will be discarded. For all your action phases, you will also earn an extra 10 solar points. This excludes on the first turn. Using the solar points you have, including points produced in your action phase, you can use cards to place structures or activate effects. During the build phase, you can place any of the 7 cards in your hand. When placed, the solar point cost will be deducted from your total, and the card is now active. You may use as many of the 7 cards in your hand as you wish, as long as you have sufficient solar points. You can also choose to play no cards. Each card type has a different purpose and effect when activated. Production and attack cards are structures, and defense cards are support cards. Each card type, including event and power cards, will be explained in detail later. At the end of your turn, very few things happen. Firstly, any cards which get destroyed during the build phase will be discarded, as well as the few effects which terminate at the end of your turn. You also have the chance to discard one of your cards, either on the field or in your hand. This card of your choice gets added to the discard pile. This is entirely optional. Finally, you must bring your hand back to 7 cards by drawing from your deck. If you did not use any cards, then there is no need to draw more. After this, your turn is over and it goes to your opponent's action phase. Production cards aim to produce solar points to increase your total. These are a type of structure, which means they get placed on the field. When I activate my happy solar panel, it gets placed on the field. However, it only produces solar points during my next action phase, where it will produce 15. If it gets destroyed, it goes into my discard pile. Attack cards aim to damage your opponent's structures, lowering their hearts, to then destroy them. These are a type of structure, which means they get placed on the field and can get damaged themselves. For example, my opponent has Hydro Dam active, so I will place Friendly Giant. For every action phase of mine, this card will deal 10 hearts to my opponent's structure. When Hydro Dam reaches 0 hearts, it gets discarded. Defense cards can attach to another structure, either a production card or an attack card. When you activate this card, you must choose a structure to permanently bond it with, placing the defense card above it. In this scenario, it is my turn, but my opponent's Friendly Giant is going to attack my Solar Melon panel. So, I will place a shield to protect it, permanently bonding the 2 cards so that the shield will take the damage instead of the Solar Melon panel. For cards like Guy with Wrench, which attack every structure on the field, the bonded cards only get attacked once. Different defense cards protect their associated cards in different ways. If my shield gets below 0 hearts, then it gets destroyed and discarded. However, if my solar melon panel gets destroyed before my shield, which can happen in some cases, then both cards will be discarded. Also, if I decide to discard my solar melon panel before it is destroyed, then the shield also gets discarded. Think about defense cards as truly bonding with their associated card. Event cards do not have health, and when activated, trigger an event on the field. This event can cast an effect on the field depending on the card. For instance, when I use Rain Cloud, all wind and hydropower gets doubled for 2 turns. For events like this one, which last more than 1 turn, they get placed in the event sector of the field until the effect is over, when they will be discarded. However, for events which are spontaneous, lasting only 1 turn, they get discarded immediately after use. Power cards do not have health, and when activated, boosts one of your structures. These cards must be placed at the same time you place your structure. Power cards work with only production and attack cards. For instance, I place Dr. Victoria, a power card, with my geothermal turbine, a production card. Therefore, the power card will heal my production card 20 hearts for all of my action phases. For power cards like this one, which last more than 1 turn, they get placed underneath the associated card until the effect is over, when they will be discarded. For Dr. Victoria, it is active until my geothermal turbine is destroyed. However, for production cards which are spontaneous, lasting only 1 turn, they get discarded immediately after use. Some cards have unique effects which change the way they interact with other cards in certain ways. These are called attributes. Some cards will have certain attributes which determine, for example, which type of attacks they are strong against, whether they can avoid defenses, or which type of structures they deal damage to. Attributes are explained in depth on each card by a case-by-case basis. I will discuss briefly what each attribute means, but I strongly recommend reading each card's circumstance individually. Every production card has an attribute determining which type of energy source they have. This includes solar, wind, hydro, nuclear, and geothermal. Certain energy types may be weaker or stronger to certain attacks, or be affected by different cards in different ways. For instance, Happy Solar Panel is a production card with a solar attribute. Therefore, its production can be doubled with the Sun card. However, it can also be completely shut down with a big concrete slab. Explosion is an attack type by specific cards. For instance, if I use Meteor Shower, then every card on the field will be destroyed. The anti-explosion attribute means that the card is strong against explosion attacks, or interacts differently with attack cards which attack with explosion. In this scenario, when I use Meteor Shower, then the Hydro Dam will not take damage, as it is immune to explosions. In addition, the Angry Solar Panel, as well as the Sun, will not be destroyed, as the Sun has an anti-explosion attribute which protects both itself and its associated card from explosions. Therefore, these two will be discarded. Airstrike is an attack type by specific cards, which avoid any defense and damages the targeted card as if there was no defense card bonded. For instance, when I use Mortar, I can choose any 2 structures of my opponent to lose 50 hearts. If I choose Wind Turbine Twins, it will still be damaged even if it has a shield, since the Mortar has an Airstrike attribute. The anti-airstrike attribute means that the card is strong against airstrike attacks, or interacts differently with attack cards which attack with airstrike. If I choose Wrench Commander with my Mortar, it will deal no damage, as it has the anti-airstrike attribute. Similarly, both the Cardboard Box and the Bulldozer will not take any damage, as the defense card protects both from airstrikes. Broad Attack is an attribute which means that the attack card damages multiple cards at once. In this circumstance, my guy with Wrench will damage all these 3 structure combinations. Broad defense is an attribute, which means that the defense card protects more than one structure on the field, not just the structure it is bonded with. Here, if my opponent places a friendly giant to attack my catapult, then the cactus will take the damage instead of the catapult because it protects all structures on the field. If my opponent places a guy with wrench, which attacks both these two structures, then the cactus will take the damage dealt to both. SolarTCG is a relatively complicated game and involves keeping track of multiple factors, aspects, and numbers of the game. This is why I recommend documenting the game on paper to easily facilitate the complexity. Each player should be responsible for tracking their energy production from all sources and their total solar point balance. They must keep track of the health of all their structures and event cards on the field and discard them when appropriate. Finally, each player must organize their hand, field, deck, and discard pile correctly. Both players also should keep track of the turn number. Remember, one turn includes both players having their turn. You may also use any other aids to make the game run smoother. This might include damage counters or a facilitator. You can be creative on this one. Thank you so much for watching until the end of this tutorial. I hope this has given you an insight to SolarTCG or clarified some essential rules. If you want to learn more about SolarTCG or LuminaDecks, the creators of the game, please visit our website linked in the description or through the LuminaDecks YouTube homepage. Here you can discover about us, our products, and how to purchase and play the game yourself. Thank you again for your time and have fun playing SolarTCG.